Greetings, everybody, and welcome to episode 48 of the Heavy NFLD official podcast. I am your host, Greg Ravengrave, and I am here to bring you some of the newest music to come out of Newfoundland and Labrador. And by newest, I don't necessarily mean stuff that was released from this year. I mean newest as in fresh and right out of high school, basically. All of the bands who I'm featuring on this episode of the podcast, well, it's called Up and Coming for a reason. It's because all of these bands are relatively new, bands that formed either, during the pandemic, or bands who are mostly from, the younger crowd in the scene. And it's something that I really like to see because it is proof that the scene is not dying. It's proof that there is a scene that is continuing to go. It's continuing to be refurbished, basically, with a new generation every time that something like the pandemic happens. There's been times in St. John's history where the scene has kind of lulled, it's gone away, and then there's some energy that's breathed back into it, some life to resuscitate it. And it definitely feels like before the pandemic, things were kind of on a bit of a downward turn. And then the pandemic pretty much killed it. But I think there were a lot of people, who were either just graduating from high school or who were still in high school who, when they're at that point in their life, they still have all this fucking energy that they want to bring out in terms of music and creation. I mean, I remember when I was back at that time, when I was first starting my own project, Mistwalker, as well as some of the bands that I was in high school, I just had so much drive to get that stuff out there. And I'm not saying that that's waned at any point in the last 10 years, but there's not much that can compare with that drive that you have to put yourself out there musically when you're just getting started out. So most of the bands that I'm going to feature on this episode are bands who have come either out of the pandemic or who are made up mostly of the younger crowd in the scene. Of course, I'm not purporting to know the age of every single person who's in every single band on this episode of the podcast. I'm purely going off what it seems like based off of these bands' social media presence, basically. So, without further ado, we are going to launch right into things, and we're going to start with the first track here. We have a band called Kaspam Cult, who have been around the scene for a little bit now. They've got a few releases under their belt, a few EPs and a few singles, and they've opened for some pretty big bands. I think they opened for Necronomicon quite recently, as well as Night Demon. So, these guys, they're a band to definitely keep your eyes on. We're going to play their self-titled track, yes, their namesake song. This is Kaspam Cult by Kaspam Cult. And if you ask me what Kaspam means, I don't have a fucking clue. Anyway, here's the song.
I'm a stupid motherfucker. I haven't been hard since I met her.
Tried it for the first time when I was 18. I snorted it. Then I didn't do it again for 2 years later. I snorted it for about 2 weeks. Then I started shooting it. Doing it ever since.
Strike the fuck out, over and over, and another floor. Can't think sober, of the ones you love, leaving you behind. And the dark will find yourself between me, your demise. Strike the fuck out, over and over, and another floor. Can't think sober, of the ones you love, leaving you behind. In the dark will find yourself, your body's left to the flies.
Okay, so what you just heard was Kaspam Cult by Kaspam Cult, followed up by Argument Then Divorce by Chimp Apparatus, and then On the Floor by Carnage from their latest EP. So, Chimp Apparatus, they've been around for, let's say, maybe a little over a year now, and those guys, pretty interesting. They have a unique fusion, I would say, of metal, punk, and some really weird, like, experimental, avant-garde, kind of eclectic stuff in there as well. They even have some stuff that you could potentially classify as funk metal, which is something that you don't really hear a lot of coming out of Newfoundland. You don't really hear much of the funk metal genre being propagated these days, period, really. Carnage, now they're a lot more of a hardcore punk band, like very pure hardcore punk, but their shit is so fast and extreme for hardcore punk that it verges on being called grindcore. So if that sounds like it's up your alley and you like the song that was just played, I highly recommend you go and check out the further discography of all three of those bands. Up next, we have a bit of a stoner project for you with Sarra Cenia. They're going to play a song called Sanctuary from their debut EP called Road Trip. These guys, they've been around for, I think, a little over a year as well. They've been playing shows pretty consistently over the course of 2022, and yeah, they're pretty fucking good. So, I don't know, load up your fucking bong, roll your joints, get ready to blaze one for this stoner rock Sanctuary. Once again, by Sarra Cenia.
I see no way out of this spell. No light of day, only darkness. I'm gonna grumble and fall, lose all control. I see no way out of this mess. Each passing day with no progress. Sit as I suffer and sin, begin again. Bother to try living a life on the horizon. Voluntary health mutilation. Sanctuary, open up and see. Sanctuary, what you've done to me.
Okay, so what you just heard was Sanctuary by Sarra, followed up by Toxic Life by Roach Smoking Buddies. And if you're wondering who Roach Smoking Buddies are, that is essentially a power violence side project of Zack St. John's featuring the man himself, Zack, as well as some of the other members of his live band. At least I'm assuming that's how it works. You never really know with these projects that are named after a single person. Anyway, we have a bunch of news that we have to get to, so without further ado, let us get to it. The biggest stories out of Newfoundland and Labrador regarding the local metal scene and punk scene in November of 2022 start off with a rather unfortunate event. The Ken Power Tattoo Company, owned by Kenneth J. Power, who is the vocalist of the groove metal band Most Likely Forever, as well as the former owner of Valhalla Tavern, was heavily damaged in a fire on November 16th. Now, the thing about this building is that there was also a family living beneath the business in an apartment. They're the Payne family, and they were forced out of their home because of this fire, and the shop was also basically completely destroyed. So our condolences go out to Ken, as well as to the Payne family, as well as Ken's friends and family and employees. It's a pretty devastating tragedy, and I just feel horrible about the whole thing. So again, my condolences go out to them. There is actually a GoFundMe that's been set up to help the Payne family, so if you want to donate to it, if you go find the article that I wrote about this story on our blog at heavynfld.wordpress.com, you'll find a link to the GoFundMe in there. In some lighter news, though, the band called Precious Blood performed their debut show at the Abbey on November 19th, alongside Kaspam Cult, Sentimentipede, and Smoke Signals, who returned from the dead after several years of basically no activity whatsoever. Precious Blood is essentially a new band formed out of the ashes of Waste Case, a band which dissolved basically just before the pandemic happened, after releasing their debut album. And it was unfortunate that they dissolved, but based on what I've heard of Precious Blood so far, it's safe to say that these guys are back to fill that void. If you've seen any weird posters hanging out around the city lately, asking if you've been having strange dreams or stuff like that, and pointing at contact information, it was related to these guys, as far as I know. I could be wrong, but it seems like the threads of connection are there, and I'm putting that out there as a theory. Also, in a surprise move, the bar that was formerly known as Plan B Bar and Lounge, which was also formerly known as CBTG's, is now back under the management of Alexander Sandy Chisholm and has been rebranded to be called The Deck, which, for those of you who've been in the metal and punk scene in St. John's for years, know the deck is basically a colloquial term used to refer to that patio that would connect CBTG's to the bar that was at one point called, what was it called? The Levy, and then it became Valhalla Tavern, and then it became Treble Lounge, as well as Distortion, which was upstairs. And everyone used to just call that the deck because you'd go down there and there will be metal and punk shows happening in all three of those venues. And it was just a super awesome time. So it's cool to see that name get recognized officially. And the first, I guess, heavier show that's going to happen there is actually happening this weekend on December 3rd. But we'll get to that later. Besides that, the other biggest story that we have is that Slowpoke was named Music NL Loud Artist of the Year. So I want to give a huge shout out to Slowpoke for winning that award, as well as to Sentimentipede because they were the runners-up. There were a few new albums that were released in November, and holy shit, it was a thrashy fucking month. Because the 3 full-length albums that came out in November were all by thrash bands. We had Allagash, who came out of nowhere and surprised everybody with a brand new full-length album called Dark Future. This is the 3rd full-length record they've done. Dark Future was actually released years ago as a demo on Allagash's YouTube channel, but it was taken down or privated or something, and you couldn't get access to it after a while. And I don't know why, because honestly those recordings were fucking awesome, but I'm super, super happy that those songs got brought back from the grave and now they're out there for everyone to hear, as well as with updated production and some added elements into each song that maybe weren't there in the previous version of this release. So you can go check that out on Allagash's Bandcamp page. We also had Triskelion, which is the solo project of Jeff Way, the guitar player for Category 6 and Artak, with his debut record Downfall. Now, Jeff worked with a bunch of other musicians on this album, including a bunch of guest singers, one of which is Amanda, the vocalist of Category 6. So yeah, if you want to check out some really awesome, thrashy power metal, I would highly recommend this album. It's pretty cool. And then we had Vertebraker with their debut record, Spinal Sword. Now this is some straight up crossover shit. This is pure meat and potatoes, punk meets fucking thrash metal. It's ripping, it's fast, it's a really, really short album. I would highly recommend you go check that shit out as well. With new EPs, we had, yours truly, in the band Rat Piss with our debut EP, Vermin Urine. It's 5 tracks of power violence that we're pretty happy with. We've been playing these songs for quite a while, over a year now. Some of them have been written for a long time, and we're really stoked to actually have them out there in the public domain for people to listen to. Well, I shouldn't say in the public domain. They're not free for you to use or whatever, but they're out there, and I would appreciate it if people checked it out, just to toot my own horn a little bit. We got some new singles. Artak came out with their yearly Halloween single with Ride, Die, Immortality. And we also had another Halloween single by Kaspam Cult called Sam Hain, so you should go check both of those out. Dead Inner Youth actually released a new single back in September called Karma Kills, which I unfortunately forgot, but I'm telling you about it now. They also have a full EP that was dropped a couple days ago, so you should definitely go and listen to that. Jaded Truth dropped the first single from their upcoming album called Take a Seat, and that single is called A City Drowned. By the time this episode goes out, I think their full-length album will actually be out, so you can go and check that out. It's actually the 3rd record that Jaded Truth has done. These guys just don't know how to stop. Fucking go check that out. And we also had Madison Strip with a brand new song called Empty Shells. It's the first new thing they've done in quite a while, and that's available on YouTube. There were a few new demos that came out as well that I'll just mention very briefly. Carnage came out with a demo just called Demo 2022, which features some songs that were previously released on other demos and EPs. Hackapick, which is a 2-piece grindcore band featuring a member who was originally from Labrador but now currently lives in Montreal. They released their 3rd demo called Pig Skull, and it fucking rips. You definitely should check that out. Also, Homesick and Wanderlust, which is a folk punk project of the person who is behind the noisecore project Sexhole, released a demo called Roadkill, which is available on Bandcamp. The Skeets also announced their 4th full-length album, which they're currently working on, another band that does not know how to stop in the local scene. And in terms of the world at large when it comes to metal music, I guess you could say it's here or there whether or not Nazareth qualifies as heavy metal. Personally, I think they're right there on that border between, bluesy hard rock and proto-metal. But their longtime vocalist Dan McCafferty passed away recently. So, Nazareth was one of the first heavier bands that I actually got to see in person, in concert, live. They left a huge impression on me. Hearing that double bass drum go in the song Razmanaz in a live setting was honestly kind of life-changing for me. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's true. And Dan McCafferty, he was one hell of a talented singer. His voice, instantly recognizable. I don't know. There's not much else I can say about him. He was a fucking legend. And, he lived a good life. And, I just want to say rest in peace, Dan McCafferty. A fucking legend. And we also have 3 shows to announce for the month of December. The first is on Friday, December 9th at the Peter Easton Pub. We have Of the Black performing alongside Smoke Signals, Knarl, and Carnage. And then, after that, we have on December 23rd, just in time for Tibbs Eve, Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid Jammers will be performing. I believe it is their last show for the foreseeable future. And they'll be playing alongside Cider Squadron 666, Kaspam Cult, and Fiend Club, which is everyone's favorite local Misfits cover band. We also have on December 17th at Bar None, Winterhearth will be playing along with Infect Dead and Kaspam Cult once again. Man, these guys, they get around. So that concludes our news segment for this episode of the podcast. Coming up next, we have a song from a band that we mentioned earlier called Sentimentipede. Yes, the runners-up for the Music NL Loud Artist of the Year Award. We're going to play a song from their debut full-length record, Pretend This Sounds Good. The name of the song is Frogslayer, and it's a fucking banger, so strap in your seatbelts and get ready for some grunge punk.
Frogslayer!
Okay, so what you just heard was Frogslayer by Sentimentipede, and that was followed up by British Columbia from Zack St. John's, who we mentioned earlier in this podcast. It's actually the first song that Zack St. John's ever released under that performing name, at least to my knowledge, based on stuff that I found on the internet. Up next, we have a thrash band that's actually been around in the scene for a while, but once again, to my knowledge, they are more on the younger side. This is Pearl, a name that you might not have heard around in a while. I'm actually not quite sure what's going on with that band. I don't know if they're still active, or if they've broken up, or if they're just taking a hiatus, or they haven't been doing anything lately. Maybe they've all moved on to other projects. I'm honestly at a loss when it comes to this band. But they did release a few singles back in the day, so we're going to play a song from the last one that they did, and it's called Synthetic Minds, once again by Pearl.
How many times have you stabbed him?
Sarra, I can't breathe.
That's on you.
Sarra, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Alright, you've not stabbed him again.
Sitting on the floor watching TV, and she just come out and said, I have something to tell you. And I asked her what, and she said that she had shot and killed a man that day.
I went to the wall. They don't have a hello, you know that I was outside. So we want to know. And I don't remember hearing that. The injury.
Bruises to his shoulder, to his head, busted lip, and long fingernail scratches.
That I anticipated. your action.
on each other.
He is dead as a result of
I
your
understand
action.
that.
Okay, once again, you just heard Synthetic Minds by Pearl, and that was followed up by Knarl, a brand new hardcore band that just emerged from St. John's this year, with a couple of untitled tracks. As far as I know, this is just called Knarl Intro and then Untitled 1. It's kind of unclear on the release of this demo on their YouTube channel, but if you want to go check the full thing out, I would highly recommend you do so. That is some heavy, breakdowny, blasty shit. I would love to see these guys play live and potentially play with them one day. And that was followed up by 6,000 Apes with Pissing Everywhere. As far as I know, I'm assuming 6,000 Apes is a play on 100 Gex. Based on the way it's spelt, that's kind of what it looks like. And as far as I know, it's basically just one of the members of Brandon Monkey Fingers, which is also a brand new band that just kind of emerged this year. I'm not really sure who is behind this project. All I know is that it is some very loud and intense noisecore. So I hope you enjoyed that. With that being said, this concludes our episode centering around the younger bands that have sprung up in the scene in the past couple of years. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And just before we sign off here today, I do want to say that we are heading into the holiday season. It is basically November 30th when I'm recording this, and hopefully it gets released tonight. But seeing as how we're going into December, I just want to let everyone know that I currently live in Montreal, as most of you listening to this probably already know. But I always take an annual trip back to Newfoundland. I didn't do it the first year of the pandemic because, of course, everything was just completely fucked that year. But I'm going to be doing it this year. I'm going to be driving down, and I'm hopefully going to have some heavy NFLD stickers with me. And I do have a few shirts left over as well that I'm going to be bringing with me too. And I will also, if you want to have a Rat Piss shirt or a Mistwalker shirt, send me a DM and let me know what size you want, and I will bring it down for you and meet up with you in person in St. John's and give it to you. Or, if you happen to be living somewhere else on the island and you want it, because I'm driving down, I could easily stop into somewhere like, Stephenville, Corner Brook, Grand Falls, Gander, wherever. I originally am from Glovertown, so I'm going to be spending a good chunk of my time there. But I'm going to be in St. John's too. I am hoping to catch a few shows during my brief return to the island. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. I also wanted to say that recently the Heavy NFLD YouTube channel surpassed 1,000 subscribers, which is something that I never ever imagined once I started this project of, archiving all of this loud punk and metal and rock music that comes out of Newfoundland and Labrador. I started this because there were so many bands from the province that were not getting any recognition, and I wanted their music to be preserved for the future, and to actually have them there for an audience so people could find this music and listen to it, and so that this art doesn't get lost. And the fact that this many people have taken an interest in this project and understand and appreciate what it is that I'm doing, I just can't thank you enough. It really warms my heart to know that you guys just love what it is that I'm doing here. And I couldn't do it if it wasn't for everyone who's been supporting Heavy NFLD over the last 5 years, or however long this project's been going on now. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say other than thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for all the support you've given this project since I started it. It really means a lot. With that being said, I'm going to stop yammering and I'm going to sign off. So once again, this has been the 48th episode of the Heavy NFLD official podcast. I am your host, Greg Ravengrave. Thank you very, very much for listening. Signing off. Peace out, everyone.